It's Jay. You got it.
All right. And why do we have him here? Why am I interviewing a person who interviewed me 2 months ago? It's because ever since he interviewed me, I kind of have his feed, his social media feed, that I can see. And I found myself agreeing with a lot of these posts, but never having mentioned any of what he mentions because all I ever talk about is consciousness and the mind side of things. And this guy is all physical. And I thought, wow, why have I not ever mentioned that and that and that and that? And I figured before I plagiarize him, I might as well interview the man himself. And the title of this podcast, just so you know, is going to be The Physical Side of Reality Creation. So thanks for being with us, Jay.
Fred, thank you for having me. It was an honor for you to come on my show. And obviously I'm thrilled, privileged, and humbled to be here on yours. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right. So we have a lot of people out there, especially in America, who don't look that good. Have you noticed?
Yeah, every now and then, Fred, when I go to the airports traveling around the world, I have tend to notice that people are not in the best of health anymore. That is for sure.
And would you say there was a time when people like you who make a living off of that couldn't make a living off of it because everybody looked like you?
Well, I wouldn't say everybody looked like me, but people were definitely much healthier. As you know, and this is a giant rabbit hole, but as we spoke on our show and as you've written about in your books, and again, I'm a huge fanboy. I've read almost all of your books. A giant shelf over here of Fred Dodson's books. The truth is that we are being attacked. It is a full systemic, full spectrum attack from all causes, from the food that we eat, from the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the plastics, the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the BPA, the phthalates. It's everywhere. So most people who are not extremely proactive and aggressive, in taking care of their personal health are overwhelmed at this point. And, my wife has a really good statement. She says most people at this point don't even tend to their health until they've lost it, right? Until they're obese or type 2 diabetic or, have some other form of disease or illness and they're in their early to mid 40s. And it's like, what do I do now? Right. I'm already 60 to 70 pounds overweight. How do I fix myself? And that's kind of where we're at now. Like you said, I mean, you just look around. It's pretty much every adult is battling some sort of a weight problem.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like an attack. I was just today, I was at the TSA to get a flight pre-check. So, and the person who did it for me, um, they were so obese they could barely breathe.
Right.
And I was thinking, what are you doing sitting in a TSA office? You should be in the hospital. I wanted to call an ambulance, right? Like, oh, okay, let me get this. Sweating, smelly,
Wow.
and it just breaks my heart. And I'm like, what have we done to humans? Who has done this to humans? That's my question to you. Who has done this to people?
Well, obviously it's a difficult answer, but I'll do my best to answer it. I mean, it's a twofold assault, right? We have an etheric, call it fourth density element, which you and I know is what we want to call service to self reptilians from wherever they hail, probably in the Orion sector, and all of their minions. And their minions are us, humans, third density humans who are essentially, as we talked about on your psychopath, and as that you've written prolifically, psychopaths, people who do not feel empathy. And as I was telling you, I'm reading Catherine Knight Jadizik's, I'm sorry, Laura Knight Jadizik's books, The Wave. I finished them now. I've just read all 8 of the books, and she, you and her are very similar in what you guys talk about. But she's like saying that the invasion of the quote unquote ETs has already happened, and they are the quote unquote psychopathic people, which again you talk about in your book too. So you guys are talking about very similar veins, who are in political office. who control the corporations, who control, everything out there that is part of the, call it the, hyperdimensional matrix control structure of third dimension: food, finance, politics, entertainment. I mean, all of these, subsidiaries of the matrix are controlled by these psychopathic people. And these psychopathic people don't have our best interests at heart. So of course they're attacking the health. Of course they're attacking the food. They're attacking the water. They're attacking the air that we breathe. And, seriously, Fred, to go deeper and go more esoteric, which, your audience is perfect. They're really just prepping this entire realm, density, for a full scale invasion. They're basically creating people through the V, through all the other, big pharma medicines and crap that people are served, to prepare the physical avatar body for whatever it is they're going to do to it, whether it's full on possession, coming in, again, from fourth density, inhabiting a third density being. We know that. You write about that. We talk about that. But that's what I see. And that's what, Laura, in the conclusion in her final book, Debugging the Universe, is saying that, they're basically prepping this planet. They're terraforming this planet or this density or this realm to full on, them taking over. And so it's like a war between us and them. It's insane. But again, to your audience, I can say this I can have this conversation because they're very educated into this kind of stuff, because you talk about this stuff in your works.
Obviously, someone, as I saw today, probably wouldn't be attracted to somebody like you to seek help. But suppose I drag that person to your place and say, Jay, what are you going to do with this person? What's if you get the most extremely obese person I can bring to your place, what's the plan, Jay?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've dealt with this in my own family, personally, as I was telling you, firsthand. My mom was morbidly obese, and she died earlier this year of COVID, of course, but she was morbidly obese like the last 20 to 25 years of her life. And, it was a very difficult thing for me, being who I am and as health conscious as I am, to deal with. And, I obviously attempted all sorts of interventions, but as you know, people are going to be who they're going to be. So, if that person was brought to me, it would first be a conversation of like, do you love and trust yourself? Which obviously they don't love and trust themselves, because that's why they've allowed themselves to get to that physical level. But it's more of a psychological component before, then we can begin to like unpack literally and figuratively, the layers of fat that they have. But, if I was to give you a physical recommendation for someone like that, I mean, obviously everything starts with nutrition. And yes, there's a psychogenic component of, again, do they love and trust themselves? Do they feel worthy? Because, I have this conversation with like very high level successful people all the time. People who come to me who are worth 50 million plus, and they sell their company or whatever, and they're like, health has gone to shit, and they're like, hey man, I'll pay you any amount of money to put me on a plan. A lot of them will say like 90 days or 6 months or something. And I laugh in their face and I say, 90 days or 6 months? Like, it took you 50 plus years to look like this. Like, what makes you think you're going to unravel and unpack, all the assaults that you've given to your physical being over this time, right? So it's kind of like a joke. And if they're serious, then, I'll keep talking to them. But a lot of those people, I just say, look, I don't want your money. I can't help you. You're not willing. You're not ready to help yourself. But so it's the psychogenic component. And then it's like, okay, we have to unpack, like, why do you eat the way that you eat? Why do you drink the way that you drink? Why are you not engaging in, regular exercise and activity between, resistance training and cardiovascular? So, if that person passes all those tests and gets that level, then it's really just talking to them about their nutrition, like, why are you obese? You ask them that question. Do you understand why you're obese? And a lot of them will say, well, I eat junk food all the time and I drink a 12 pack of beer at night, or, I eat 3 pizzas a day. Everybody's got their own thing, but it's like, if they understand enough about why they've gotten to the place they have physically, then it's a lot easier, obviously, to unpack poor choices. You have to clean things up. Again, you have to start trusting in yourself and loving yourself and feeling worthy that you could actually lose the weight and get into a better, physical condition. But a lot of those times, sometimes people don't, a lot of people who have put all their life and energy into building a business and getting to a place where they're now, independently wealthy, sometimes generationally wealthy, they're still not living, Fred, with the truth. They're not living in coherence. They're lying to themselves. They're doing, a bunch of recreational drugs, eating, overeating when people aren't looking. I mean, to destroy themselves physically. And again, it always comes back to some form or shape of like, do you feel worthy? And if you feel worthy of having a better physical, expression, what are you doing, obviously, to maintain that, right? And you write about this stuff with reality creation, gratitude and all these other things. But most people who become so physically unhealthy at a very, spiritually amputated level have some form of a trauma that makes them just not, again, love and trust themselves, so that they just do these things to abuse their physical being.
Okay, trauma is interesting. So that would mean that a lot of people in our country are traumatized.
100%. I mean, I don't think there's a single physiological disease state that doesn't result from some form of spiritual amputation. Right. So it's like, I mean, there's obviously been many books written, Louise Hay, there's numerous others where, they can quantify every physical disease or physical, illness or ideology based on some sort of spiritual, psychospiritual resistance, in the energy body. Right. And then we go into the Easterns and, they talk about the chakras and, cleansing and clearing all that stuff. But it all comes down to some shape or form of spiritual amputation that originates, early in life, a past life, and obviously, and then continues if you're not willing to do inner work on yourself to, figure out.
That's why you have the map
is.
of consciousness behind you, because that's the basis, right?
100%. 100%.
Okay. All right. Could you, if you were to pinpoint a decade or an era where the decline in America and by extension the rest of the world, where the decline started, would you say it was the 70s or the 60s or the 80s?
I mean, it's a great question. I think it's all of the above. I think they're, the dark side, call them the parasitic energies. Great triumph was 9/11, which was obviously in 2020. It was at 2001. Yeah, 2001. And it was a culmination of everything that they instituted in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? So in the 60s and 70s, it was like the drugs, that they gave to the counterculture people. And then obviously the CIA and all these different alphabet agencies were running, God knows, all sorts of clandestine operations, testing, poor people and doing all sorts of experimentation. But then, and that even started back into World War II, but then getting into the 80s, and it's when they took over the food, right? In the 80s is when they started making all of this industrialized boxed food stuff, GMO. And then in the 90s, it was really, it was in the 90s, it was drugs. It was the HMOs and the PPOs and, what do you call it? Subrogated healthcare. You had a co-payment, you could get this drug, you could get that drug. And then that's when they also started hooking people, as you know, Fred, on SSRIs, right? All the brain drugs, which when you really look at the SSRIs, I mean, these things are more addictive than cocaine. And then after that, it became the heroin-based drugs, right? The codeine drugs and the benzodiazepines, all of these horrifying, literally addictive, narcoleptic and uppers and downers, depressants, all these horrible drugs got mainstreamed, and people started getting prescriptions.
I was talking to a guy the other day. He was in really bad shape, and he said, "Yeah, well, I keep receiving these text messages from Medicare. They send me about 10 messages a day."
Imagine that.
And I said, what a fucking nuisance. And I didn't realize that he actually likes receiving messages. He said, what? That's not a nuisance. If they didn't send me messages, I wouldn't know what to take.
Right. I wouldn't know how to, so that I could talk about that. So there's actually a giant cottage industry. So to go back to your question though, so the 90s were drugs. And then 2001, they created a giant ritual and traumatized the globe. And then since then, it's just been them instituting they're Manchurian candidates. And their Manchurian candidates, as you know, now run pretty much every government. I mean, it's all such a sham. We obviously had one break in 2016, and we all know what happened in that. But it's like, it's just been one thing after the other to where they just have assaulted everything, our senses, our physicality, obviously our spirituality. And it's just been an all cause assault. And getting back to the text.
Oh, but it seems to have made you stronger.
Well, so there are a lot of people out there that are aware of this, again, in your books, and then in the Wave series, and again, the Wave series is, I've, like you, I've, read prolifically, but that's top of mind right now because I just finished it. But the Seas, which is this group of sixth density beings that speak to her, through her channeling or whatever, the Cassiopeans is which they're referred to. They're basically us from the future. And they're telling her and her group that knowledge protects, right? And ignorance endangers. That's like kind of the theory. And so, like, if you have knowledge, which clearly I have knowledge, you have knowledge, we know what's going on, then your awareness is kind of like an insulated barrier / shield to all of their subversive tactics. But again, if you have no awareness, if you're delusional, if you're Joe, normie, Mr. NPC,
they'll break you. They'll break you. Yeah.
Yeah. You think the government is your friend and your ally, then you're basically just a sieve. I mean, you're really, what she says, you're an energy vector for them to actually use you like the Matrix and have Agent Smiths pop into you and siphon energy from people like me and you, people that are aware, people who have hacked through the Matrix. So it's a crazy world that we live in, but the more aware you are, the more protected you are from their quote unquote shenanigans.
All right. Okay. Thank you. What do you think? Something I'm curious about, where do you think normal fitness studios and normie fitness trainers go wrong? I'm pretty sure you have some take on that. You've never said it. I've never seen you say it, but I believe that somewhere in your mind, you think normie fitness schools do something wrong. What is it?
It's an awesome question, but we don't have that much time. So really, the average person that's involved in working in fitness, let's say Joe, LA Fitness Health Club, where there's 5,000 locations in the United States. They just look at it as a job. They have no credentials. They haven't actually gone to school to learn about human physiology or anatomy or biomechanics or any of that kind of stuff. It's just a personal trainer job that they sign up for, and they take some stupid, probably weekend class that the gym gives them, and then they go out onto the gym floor and they train people. And so obviously they're not qualified. Now, granted, there's plenty of people that are working in gyms that are qualified, and they are what I would say outliers, but the majority of them are, again, underskilled, undereducated, and it's a job, right? Versus like the hardcore fitness professional who would be what I would call a clinical strength and conditioning specialist. They have a license from the NSCA. There are some other governing bodies where these people were, studying like doctors. They've got 8 to 10 years of hardcore, clinical experience, study, and application. And then they go out and they train people and they help people in that way. So there are good people out there. I know a lot of these folks, but the average person, Fred, today who goes to a big box corporate gym and hires a trainer in one of those gyms is absolutely not getting quality instruction. Because again, those people are not committed. They're not endeavored. I mean, they're literally just job getters, and they have a job as a personal trainer. I mean, you look at them, they're not even fit themselves. I mean, I train in a gym here in Tampa at EOS Fitness. It's like a mile down that road from my house. And every time my wife is very fit too, but every time my wife and I go in there, we just kind of look around and we look at some of these trainers with some of these people, and we're just like, my God. I mean, there's times I want to literally walk up to the trainer and say, get out of the way, dude. Like, let me help this person, but that's not my place. And I don't do stuff like that, but it's like everything else in America. Everything has been adulterated by some sort of corporation or corporate scheme, or, we got to make profits. It's a money grab, we're cutting corners, and it's like the same thing in the gyms. So you're seeing the same thing.
Okay. Um, how often do you work out a week?
So I train with weights 3 days a week, very religiously, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, depending on my week and where I'm traveling in the world. Sometimes it's not Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but 3 days a week out of 7. And then
One hour?
I do cardio every day in my house. No, I train, at a gym when I'm at home. But if I'm on the road, hopefully the hotel, I try to find, most of the time we'll stay in hotels that have a fitness center or gym. But like in my house, uh, I'm armed and dangerous, right? Like I have a bike. We have a really high end treadmill that does a 45-degree incline. It's like climbing Mount Everest. Like if you're just walking 1.2 miles on a 45-degree incline, it's brutal, right? So my wife normally trains on the treadmill and I do my stationary bike, which is in my studio office here. And it's right behind me. It's right over here in the corner. And I probably do 45 minutes of biking a day. Not on my lifting days, but sometimes if I have time, in my schedule. But normally I wake up very early in the morning and it's the first thing I do. And I do, I think I was telling you this, I've even gotten to a level where I can meditate when I'm riding my bike.
Are you
you know?
listening to anything while biking?
When I'm meditating, I listen to a healing chakra. I forget the name of it. It's an app, and
Okay,
my
so
eyes are
you're not
closed.
listening to pop music, you're listening to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I will every now and then listen into very uplifting, like, vocal house music or deep house music that has like a specific sync and tempo and stuff like that, just to motivate me. But it just depends on when I'm doing it. We also have Sonos in my house, and every now and then I'll put on a very instrumental, like high energy Sonos in my room. I have it in every room in my house, so I'll put it in my office where nobody else can hear it, and I'll just listen to that. But very very rarely do I listen to anything from the mainstream.
Okay,
Very,
interesting. Yeah,
and you know
very
why.
interesting. Yeah, I talk to a lot of people, such as myself and yourself. They all say the same thing. I don't listen to mainstream. I don't like mainstream. I don't like radio. And we all know why.
Exactly. Yeah, there's hypnotic frequencies.
Hmm.
There's all sorts of stuff they're doing in there. CIA is experimenting on the populace. I mean, HARP is not a weather modification program. That's the cover story. It's a brain modification. They're training people with everything, and too, Wi-Fi. I mean, it's insane. It's incessant. It's never ending. You have to shield yourself. You have to, be very proactive in protecting yourself.
So, are you a Pleiadian?
That's a good question. I would assume that both of us are, man. I mean, I can't prove that. Um, but based on my meditations and my inner work and the reflection and contemplation and introspection that I've done in my life, I feel that I'm, some form of that. But I mean, I would say probably almost most, I'm not most, but a lot of humans have some sort of higher density being or soul group or something, energy that have come here. Again, aware people for sure to attempt to shift the balance of power here. Or, again, if ascension is real, and I believe that it is, I know that it is, I would say, where our goal is to help people see the light. I mean, as you know, it's important to say, like, we're not here to like shake people and wake them up, right? But you and I, through our works and through through our knowledge and our awareness, can help by putting out information that if people are like-minded people are attracted to it, that we can help them see, quote unquote, things that are relatively usually unseen.
All right. What's your take on supplements?
I think supplements are amazing. So, but with the discretion that they're not a panacea, you know, as the master reality creator himself knows, what we create with our thoughts is the reality that we can ultimately create in physicality, right? So if you are living a healthy lifestyle, and I like to use a word or a term, I call it insulin controlled. And when you live insulin controlled, you regulate your carbohydrate intake, right? So it's like, depending on your ethnicity, people who have ancestry closer to the equatorial plane or poles, versus people like me and you who are more Northern European, Slavic, Neanderthal, feast or famine type guys. We all have different levels of insulin, right? And so like my wife, whose mom was from Culiacan, Mexico, so she's very close to the equatorial plain, darker skinned, those people have much stronger insulin sensitivity because they grew up in places where they could just reach their arm up and grab food off of branches. Whereas you and I, our descendants and our people come from tundra, cold, is feast or famine. You could go 2 days without eating and then they killed a big bison or whatever it was. They killed an elk or whatever. And then you ate, giant meals. So everybody is a little bit different in that regard. And so once you understand like what your insulin sensitivity is, then you can regulate your carbohydrate intake around it. So somebody like me and you, we can fast for 20 to 24 hours, even longer, and have no issue. But my wife, if she fasts for like longer than 16 to 18 hours, her insulin really spikes or surges and she's, feed me.
So
everybody.
So you're telling me you believe, okay. So you're telling me there's body types.
100%. And there's actually a really good book out there by Dr. Peter Diamo, who's now dead, deceased, called Eat for Your Blood Type. And he talks about basically those same things. I mean, everything that I just told you is from his research and stuff like that, but also my experimentation and my experience of dealing with people. And again, usually the darker skinned a person, the better, again, all things being equal, insulin sensitivity they have. And so it's harder for them to fast, but everyone can fast. You can train yourself to fast. And obviously I'm a huge believer in fasting. I've written 3 books on fasting. And the 2 biochemical processes of hormesis and autophagy is what happens when you fast for 18 hours or longer. And both of those processes, is the simplest way for people to understand them, is a cellular fumigation, right? So it's like if you regularly fast, Fred, twice a week, 2 days a week, and again, I like to say 18 hours of no food, you're going to live longer than the average person due to those 2 biochemical processes of autophagy and hormesis. And so, fasting is an amazing thing. You don't get into the arguments of all these people who claim this diet's better than this diet, keto or carnivore or low fat or high carb or Atkins or ketogenic or all this stuff. I mean, I know all of them backwards and forwards, but if you just fast a couple days a week, and again, fasting is defined as not eating for 18 hours. You can drink as much water as you want. I'm fasting right now, right? You will live longer again for those 2 processes.
Okay. Well, there was a time nobody talked about keto or gluten sensitivity. All that is because something has been done to our food, is it not?
100%. 100%. The GMO has been a gigantic scam to contaminate the food supply. Again, they're terraforming the environment. By the way, I don't know what it's been like in South Carolina the last couple of days, but dude, we just came back from Mexico where there's absolutely no chemical spraying in the skies. There's no chemtrails. And we came back to Florida and, we were obviously hypersensitive to not seeing it down there. And we came back to Tampa and I was like, got off the plane, was like looking out the portal of the plane and there was just so much. So they're chemtrailing the hell out of the United States right now again, which they've been doing for God knows how long. But yeah, dude, it's a full spectrum assault. All the boxed foods in the United States in every grocery store is laden with bad stuff. Let's just put it that way. And that's not even saying what we know probably Gates and his buddies and pals are doing with a lot of the actual fruits and vegetables now, because now they say they're spraying stuff on that. I mean, again, I don't want to go full bore conspiracy, but I mean, it's pretty difficult living in the United States to think that you can avoid the contamination that they're purposely doing.
Mm-hmm. So since you believe in blood types, you also believe in blood tests, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I actually partnered with a company called Private MD Labs, that anybody can get their blood work done or lab work done for very affordable cost year round, but whether you're a man or a woman, I even have like a basic level, which is a couple $100 to like all the way advanced level, like $750 and get every single biomarker, inflammatory marker measured and understand. Like it's a really good question because the average person does not understand how to get blood work. Again, they rely on the lab coat gods to tell them. And then the lab coat gods don't even know anything about blood work themselves. I mean, there are specialists, pathologist type people that do, but not the average garden variety, family doctor, or emergency medicine doctor doesn't understand anything about labs. They don't understand. But so you can learn, I mean, I teach people how to read their own labs and stuff. I've been doing it for more than 2 decades. But if you go to privatemdlabs.com and you just start reading on that website, there's tons of information. They do videos. I mean, I've got tons of videos people can find online on like how to read your lab work. But again, Fred, people are, so ensconced and entrained by doctors to do all of
it's
this.
almost like you're saying that every individual has to become a researcher, an expert on every single thing.
Not every single thing, but 100%. My statement is you have to become the proactive scientist of your own health. There's no one out there going over your lab work. There's no one over there going over your biomarkers. There's nobody out there that's like looking at your quote unquote physical reports and stuff like that. But you, right? And again, if you go to a family doctor or a PPO doctor or HMO doctor, what are they going to truly do for you? I tell people this every day, and I know a lot about this world. I would not go to a doctor unless I was gut shot and bleeding out, or I had some sort of shrapnel in my body that needed to be surgically removed. I do not go for diagnostic tests. I do not do any of this because it's all one giant scam to intimidate you, to make you fearful of quote unquote something that may or may not be normal, so that then you then think about it, right? You think about people that get their colonoscopies or their mammograms or all of this stuff. And they intimidate them to think, oh, well, we found something. And then you say to them, well, what was it? And they're like, well, it's not cancerous, but it might become cancerous. So we recommend you have it surgically removed, not knowing, meaning the patient, that 50% of surgeries in hospitals in, let's just say the West, to anybody over the age of 65 is a coin flip as to whether or not you live or die, because the bacteria that grow in hospitals now due to the overprescribing of antibiotics are resistant to the surgical steel. So you can literally be sewn up from having a polyp removed from your colon. And if you're 65 or older, it's a 50% chance that you're going to die from post-surgical infection because they can't.
I don't go to hospitals.
No. I mean, why would anybody go to a doctor? Again, unless you were bleeding out and you needed to be sutured, or you had shrapnel in you or a gunshot or something like that. There's absolutely no reason, dude. I mean, it's all a scam, all of it. The body, as you know, is a perfectly capable organism when you love and trust yourself and know that you can heal yourself of healing itself. 100%. You got to live a clean life. You can't be drinking, a 12-pack of beer and pounding down Doritos and Mountain Dew and pizza and cheesecake all day. But, if you live clean, eat clean, you don't need to go to a doctor for anything. Absolutely nothing.
Okay, just quickly here. What's your take on aging?
That's a great question. So I live and die on teaching people how to what I call age regress. And I'm 53 years old. I'm about the same age as you, a little bit older. And all my biological age. So something people can do today now is actually get their biological age. What is biological age? It's the age of their cells, right? It's not the chronological age of you. It's actually the cellular age of your organ and biological systems. So there's a couple companies out there, one called True Diagnostic. The other one is called Age. And you can go to these companies online and you can, pay $300, $250, whatever it is. I think both of them are $350 now. And they'll send you a, pinprick, and you measure your blood, from your thumb, and they can tell you literally your biological age. And it's all based on like the Hayflick computational model and, hereditary SNPs and DNA evaluation and analysis and all that stuff. But they can tell you what your biological age is. So my biological age right now at almost 53, I'll be 53 in February, is 24 and a half, which is really low. Right now, there's people that have better biological ages than me out there, but aging is physiological aging and physiological death. I would assume in these current bodies, which are very limited and DNA tweaked and altered, we can probably live, Fred, in these bodies to 160 to 180. Now, again, quality and quantity. I mean, obviously someone like me, someone like you, we don't want to be decrepit, hunched over, broken spine, spinal bifida, scoliosis, all that stuff. But I think you can personally live pretty long, physiologically, and be healthy and be robust and maintain your health into your, probably, and I'm speculating here, but I would say into your early hundreds. But we don't have a lot of people that know how to do that yet because it's so new, understanding all this stuff. But there are many, many supplements, because you asked me earlier about supplements that can help delay or stem the tide of biological aging and, cellular aging. There's also, really good drugs, medications. I work with these all the time, peptides, right? Peptides and bioregulators. I mean, they absolutely can reverse senescence, which is, again, another term that talks about cells that are being aged and, free oxidation radical degradation and stuff like that, oxidative waste. So, all of these things can help, optimize your aging process and really truly slow the cellular degradation that you would normalize or otherwise have without using them.
Okay, that's a lot of information for people to look up. Anybody listening to this guy put so much information. You can look it all up. You can read up on it. It's an entire seminar right in this podcast. If you're paying attention, if you're not paying attention, you need to pay him or other coaches to move you along. But it's actually all in there. Two more things. What is your take on water?
It's the lifeblood of sentient beings in the third dimension for sure. I think I talked to you about this. Maybe I didn't. So I only drink this water. Now I'm a water Nazi. I'm very anally retarded about water, but Icelandic. So there's a guy out there, forget his name now, but he owns the company Water and Wellness, Dr. So-and-so. He's like the most well-renowned water doctor in the world. And his name is escaping me. And he's actually a friend of mine. So I apologize, Doc. But he will tell you that Icelandic water is the last non or uncontaminated not filtrated, but what do you call it? Wellspring water on the planet. Fukushima, which, as you know, was also purposely done by them, has partially contaminated, if not fully contaminated, the majority of the water supply on the planet, including freshwater springs. But this is like the last deep water spring that does not have any kind of radiation or contamination.
That's a nice pitch. That's a great pitch.
I don't sell this. No, I mean, I literally don't sell this, but I mean, I drink this water because I know that there's another company.
I mean, that would be a great pitch. Okay, this is the last uncontaminated water in the world, ladies and gentlemen.
We're all drinking contaminated water at all times, right? Like if you don't have access to this, like when I go to Mexico, you can't get this in Mexico. So I mean, you're going to be drinking contaminated water.
Is this actually from Iceland?
Yeah, it is Icelandic. So I feel like this company who owns this company, and of course, this ownership can change every day or any day, but like I really feel this is like an angelic company. Like they still are producing it where it comes from, at least for now. But
do you use water filters at all?
I don't, because there's really nothing you can filter. I mean, everything is so dirty. I mean, there's a million companies out there that talk about reverse osmosis. And, I have a water softening system in my house, and I have like a, saline thing. And, my water is very, soft and salty in Florida, as you know. But most of the water supplies are contaminated. The entire global water supply is contaminated. But the other thing about Icelandic water is it's the lowest level of deuterium of like water that's available over the counter. Now you can buy deuterium depleted water, which is called light water. And that water is, even better for our cells than just normal water, but that's like a whole nother story for another day. But I mean, my team, we've written an article about deuterium depletion. There's actually people out there that think that deuterium was one of the contaminants that was used on Earth at the flood. to wipe out the population, because the higher the level of deuterium, the highest level of deuterium, the body can't survive. Well, biological organisms can't survive with deuterium and stuff. So it's like, that's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down and read about that. But you can, if you drink and buy, it's very expensive to buy light water, but if you dilute regular water with deuterium depleted water, it's a lot healthier for you. At one time, I was doing it for like about a year and a half with my wife, but then, we were moving so much, it was just so hard to keep up with their deal. But my site, it's jaycampbell.com. You can go on there and just search deuterium depleted water and read like a 6,000 word article on like deuterium depletion and like why it's important. It's pretty interesting.
I had no idea you're a water Nazi. The question came off the cuff, totally unprepared. I must have picked up on the fact that you want to talk about water. Okay, is there anything else I didn't mention that you would love to talk about? If you had the whole world to talk to, well, what do you want to tell them? What do you want to tell the people?
It's a great question. I think that you and I probably should put on a seminar at some point, internationally, and in one of the places that we can put up a giant force field around us so that they don't blow it up or hit us with an ICBM. No, honestly, I think we talked about a lot of stuff here. For anybody who's watching this podcast, I make almost everything I do available for free. You can go to jaycampbell.com/free books, and all of my books, with the exception of the 2 books that came out this year, which are still selling on Amazon right now, you can get downloadable PDF versions. But all my books, I've written 7 books now. 5 of them are international bestsellers on Amazon. They all have like massive numbers of 5-star reviews. And it's what you said, it's talking about health optimization, how to optimize your hormones, how to do things with medications versus doing it naturally. A lot of stuff on fasting. And as you know, I haven't written a book on spirituality yet. So that is in the works right now. And I think hopefully if we have enough time on our side, I'll be able to get that book out at some point middle of next year. And when I do, of course, I will send it to you before anybody else has it, so you can read it. But we're titling it right now "Essential Alchemy," and it's going to be a really good combination of like the things that you write about, but then also have a little bit of the physical stuff, but then also have a good history of all the things that you've written. So you will obviously be a part of the origin story of helping me collate everything that's going on here and write something that most people hopefully can understand and at least relate to.
All right. Okay. We're looking forward to it. Well, Jay, thank you for taking the time with your expertise. The amount of stuff you've given to me is overwhelming. So I recommend people push the pause button and listen carefully, because there's so much in there. Thank you so much.